A vast, dark expanse of space stretched endlessly before the eyes of all who dared to look. Stars dotted the void like distant pinpricks of light, offering little comfort in the cold emptiness. The galaxy had known peace for many years, the different species living in relative harmony, all busy with their own affairs. But this calm would not last. A signal, a blip on the radar, started to grow. It came from deep space, far beyond the borders of any known star system. No one knew what it was, and no one had ever seen anything like it before. The galaxy's most advanced scanners could not identify its source, nor could they predict what it meant. The mystery grew with every passing hour. At first, it seemed like a trick of the mind. A massive object appeared on the galactic maps, but no one could make sense of it. The shape was unusual, something not meant to be in space. It didn't resemble any starship or freighter. It was too large, too perfect in its form. The reports began flooding in from various observatories, each one claiming something different. Some suggested it was a new form of space debris. Others swore it was a new type of weapon, or even a rogue asteroid. No one could agree on what this strange phenomenon could be. Then one of the nearest space stations, situated on the edge of a relatively quiet system, made an unprecedented discovery. The object was moving toward them, slowly but steadily. There was no escape. The massive shape, now visible to the naked eye, had a silhouette unlike any ship ever designed by the known species of the galaxy. It was enormous, stretching out across the void like a beast of metal, its surface gleaming under the light of distant stars. Its structure appeared to be one seamless piece, no visible joints or seams, just smooth, cold, metallic armor that reflected the stars in eerie silence. The station immediately sent a distress signal. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Was it a new enemy? A foreign species? The unknown was the most terrifying thing of all. The station sent out multiple messages, trying to reach the approaching object. They used every form of communication, from simple radio signals to complex data bursts, hoping to catch the attention of whatever, or whoever, was out there. But there was no response. Days passed, and the object grew larger on the station's view screens. It was coming closer, and yet still no communication came. Then the impossible happened. A sudden burst of energy shot out from the massive ship, filling the station's communication channels with a strange, incomprehensible series of sounds and signals. It was clear that something intelligent was trying to communicate, but no one could understand it. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the interference stopped. A single line of text appeared on every monitor across the station. Humanity has arrived. The message was simple. It was clear, but it left everyone speechless. Who were these humans? And why now? The galaxy had never heard of them. No one knew where they came from. No one knew their history. Some believed it was a hoax, a trick to frighten the galaxy into submission. Others thought it might be some kind of psychological warfare, an attempt to get the galaxy's attention in a way that would leave everyone fearful and uncertain. On every world, from the technologically advanced cities of the core worlds to the peaceful agrarian colonies on the outskirts of the galaxy, news of this mysterious ship spread like wildfire. Scientists scrambled to make sense of the data. Military leaders held secret meetings, trying to plan for what seemed like an inevitable conflict. The unknown ship was just too powerful, too strange, and its intentions were unclear. What could they do to defend themselves? The fear of the unknown grew with every minute. Messages were sent to every corner of the galaxy. A council was called, gathering the best minds, the most respected leaders, and the most experienced military strategists. They tried to analyze everything they knew about this new threat, but there was very little information to go on. All they had were a few seconds of communication that were more confusing than helpful. But one thing was certain. The warship was human, and the galaxy had never seen anything like it. Some people speculated that humanity was a lost civilization, one that had disappeared long ago. Perhaps they had been hiding in the depths of space, waiting for the right moment to return. Others believed that humanity might be a new force altogether, one that had developed technology far beyond what the galaxy's species had seen. No one knew the truth, and the longer the warship remained silent, the more terrifying the uncertainty became. In the vast expanse of space, the warship continued its journey. It didn't rush. It didn't change course. It simply moved forward, a force of nature, relentless and unstoppable. The stars themselves seemed to dim in the presence of the ship, as though the darkness of space was closing in around it. The warship's trajectory remained clear. It was headed for the galaxy's central hub, where all the major powers of the galaxy held sway. And as it neared its destination, the ship's presence became an undeniable fact. It wasn't just an anomaly anymore. It was something real, something that could not be ignored. On one of the largest space stations in the galaxy, the station commander stared at the view screen, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He knew they were running out of time. He didn't know if he was looking at a new ally or a threat of unimaginable power, but the galaxy had to be ready for whatever was coming. The mystery of the ship's origin and purpose remained unsolved. Its technology was far beyond anything known to the galaxy's inhabitants. Its appearance was unlike anything seen before, and all the galaxy could do was wait, bracing for whatever would come next. The first few encounters with the ship were nerve-wracking. Small scouting vessels were sent out to get a closer look, but none of them returned. The warship was too powerful. The galaxy's fleets couldn't approach without risk of being destroyed. The more the galaxy's leaders tried to understand, the more questions arose, and the deeper the mystery became. Who were these humans, and why had they come now? Then, a final message arrived. It wasn't from the warship this time. It was a simple, chilling message from a distant world, decoded in a language the galaxy could understand. Prepare yourselves. Humanity is ready for war. The galaxy stood frozen, unsure of what to do. What could they do? How could they prepare for something like this? In the silence that followed, one thing became clear. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As the warship continued its slow, inexorable march through the galaxy, the tension grew. Galactic leaders, military commanders, and scientists alike could only watch and speculate about what might come next. The warship didn't move with haste, but every inch it gained toward the heart of the galaxy seemed to add to the growing unease that spread like wildfire across the galaxy's many worlds. In countless command centers, emergency meetings were called. The best minds of each faction tried desperately to analyze the ship's technology, trying to decipher how it worked and what its intentions might be. Every data packet, every piece of information gathered was scored in detail, but no one could truly understand the scope of what they were facing. The warship's power and structure were unlike anything they had ever seen. No known species had this level of technology, and the galaxy's advanced military fleets could only wonder how a single ship, with no other known reinforcements, could possess such destructive capabilities. The ship didn't respond to any of the galaxy's overtures. Communications from various systems and stations were either ignored or met with a single chilling message: humanity has arrived. And that was all. No explanation, no demands, just that message, broadcast across all frequencies in every language the galaxy had. And then silence. Fear and curiosity began to mingle. Was this a test? A demonstration of power? Was this humanity's way of showing what it was capable of without even firing a single shot? And if so, why? What did they want? What were they preparing for? No one knew, and that uncertainty gnawed at the hearts of every leader, soldier, and citizen across the galaxy. As days passed, the warship grew closer to the heart of galactic civilization. It passed by uninhabited star systems, massive asteroid fields, and the fringes of long-forgotten space stations, all while maintaining the same steady pace. Nothing stood in its way, and no one dared try to stop it. The idea of confronting the warship seemed absurd. Even the most powerful fleets were helpless against it. their advanced weapons and ships no match for the unknown force that this ship represented. In the heart of the galaxy, at the command center of one of the largest military fleets, General Zoran sat at the head of a table surrounded by his best officers and advisors. Their faces were grim. They knew they couldn't afford to make a mistake. The warship's journey toward them was inevitable, and the longer they waited, the fewer options they would have left. "We cannot continue to sit idly by," General Zoran said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "We need to understand what we're dealing with before it's too late. We don't know if they've come in peace or if they intend to destroy us all. But we need answers." One of the senior officers spoke up. "Sir, we've intercepted more messages, but they don't make sense. It's like the ship is taunting us, playing with our attempts to understand. The message humanity has arrived is all it says, nothing more." Zoran nodded, his brow furrowing as he thought about the situation. "We've tried everything. All our best ships, our most advanced scanners. Nothing works. But there's one thing we haven't tried. We need to send a ship directly to the warship, a single craft, a reconnaissance mission, something that can get close enough to figure out what this warship truly is." His officers exchanged uneasy glances. "That's risky," one of them said. "What if the ship destroys them as soon as they get close?" "I know," Zoran replied, "but we have to take that risk. If we don't understand what we're up against, we won't stand a chance when it reaches our capital." The plan was set. A fleet of small, fast reconnaissance ships would be launched to approach the massive warship, hoping to get close enough to gather vital information. They would move in quickly, take their readings, and retreat before the warship could react. It was their only option. The team was assembled, and the ships were launched within hours. As the small fleet of ships moved toward the warship, the tension was palpable. The vastness of space made the journey seem endless, and the closer they got to the warship, the more oppressive the silence became. No signals, no communication, just the cold, empty space and the massive, looming ship in front of them. "Stay sharp," the lead pilot's voice crackled through the comms. "We're almost there. Get ready to send the data." The fleet moved in cautiously, maintaining a safe distance at first. The warship was a towering presence, its sheer size making it almost impossible to comprehend. Every sensor and scanner they had was working overtime, but they couldn't detect anything useful. No engines, no weapon systems, no signs of life. The ship seemed to be empty, yet its aura of power and threat was undeniable. The lead pilot moved the ship closer, using every trick to stay undetected, but as they approached, the warship's sensors seemed to come alive. A brilliant flash of light erupted from the ship's surface, and the lead pilot quickly pulled back, giving the signal to retreat. But it was too late. In an instant, a pulse of energy shot out from the warship. The small reconnaissance ship that had gotten too close was hit, its systems frying in an instant. The ship began to spin out of control, and a moment later, it exploded into a fiery ball of debris. The fleet had seen enough. The warship was a living nightmare, its technology far beyond anything they could hope to understand. It had not only withstood every attempt at communication, but now it had demonstrated its deadly power. As the remnants of the reconnaissance team retreated in horror, the message from the warship once again echoed through space. "Humanity has arrived." The galaxy's leaders were left in stunned silence. The first real attempt to understand humanity had failed, and it had failed spectacularly. The warship, seemingly invincible, was closing in, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. The galaxy had never faced a threat like this before, and no one knew what would happen next. Would humanity be their ally, or had they come for something far darker? For the first time in many years, the galaxy realized something that chilled them to their core. They were not alone in the universe anymore, and humanity, whatever it was ready for war. As the days passed and the galaxy held its breath, a sense of urgency began to take hold. The warship, which had once seemed so distant and abstract, was now an unavoidable reality. It was headed straight for the heart of the galaxy, and with every passing moment, its power and mystery grew. The galaxy's leaders were faced with an impossible decision. How could they prepare for a threat they knew so little about? The warship had already destroyed one reconnaissance ship without a second thought, and no one dared to send any more. The galaxy's best fleets were helpless against it. What could they do? General Zoran, still at the helm of the largest fleet in the galaxy, spent every waking moment trying to make sense of the situation. But the more he studied the warship, the less he understood. It was so unlike anything he had ever encountered. The ship's structure seemed to defy conventional understanding of space travel. Its materials were unknown. Its energy output was off the charts, yet there was no visible sign of propulsion. It didn't need to use conventional methods of fuel or power. It was like nothing they had ever seen. Zoran sat in the command center, his eyes fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy, watching the warship slowly draw closer to the central systems. He could feel the weight of every decision pressing on his shoulders. The future of the galaxy, of every species in it, rested on how they responded to this looming threat. Every strategy, every idea they came up with seemed futile. They had no way of knowing what the warship was capable of beyond the initial demonstrations of its power. Its silence, its calm, was more terrifying than any weapon. "We need to find out more about these humans," Zoran said, speaking to his officers. "If we don't understand what we're up against, how can we defend ourselves?" The officers exchanged worried looks. They had tried everything. Sending ships out had only led to destruction. All communication attempts had been met with silence or the same cryptic message. Yet, Zoran knew they couldn't just sit back and wait. Something had to be done. The warship was too close, its presence too overwhelming. There had to be a way to understand it before it was too late. Suddenly, an idea struck him. It was risky, incredibly risky, but it was their only option. If they couldn't understand the warship, maybe they could understand the humans behind it. There had to be some clue, some trail left behind that could give them the answers they needed. "We need to send a team to the front," Zoran said decisively. "A small covert team. Not to approach the warship directly, but to find out more about these humans. We'll look for any traces of them, any information, any records left behind from their past. It's the only way we can gather intelligence." The officers nodded, though their faces betrayed their concern. The warship was too close. Any mission sent into its path would be putting those involved in immediate danger. But Zoran was right. They had no other choice. It was a chance, a small one, but a chance nonetheless. Within hours, a small, elite team of explorers and researchers was assembled. They would travel to a distant planet that had once been home to humanity, or so some ancient records suggested. It was a planet forgotten by time, hidden at the edges of the galaxy. If humanity had ever existed, it was there. And perhaps, if they were lucky, the team could find some clue as to who these humans were and why they had returned now, of all times. The journey was long, and the team's nerves were high. The planet they were headed to was located in a part of space that had been considered largely uninhabited, a sector that had been ignored for centuries. Old records spoke of humanity's ancient origins, their rise and fall. There was talk of a war long forgotten, a war that had ended in humanity's apparent disappearance. The galaxy had always assumed that they had vanished, leaving no trace of their existence. Yet, here they were, now appearing with a ship that dwarfed everything the galaxy had seen. As the small team's ship entered the distant system, they saw the planet come into view. It was a cold, desolate world, its surface covered in miles of barren land and rocky plains. The planet was mostly uninhabited, with only scattered ruins dotting its surface. The team carefully navigated through the system, avoiding any debris or remnants of the past. They had been given strict instructions to be cautious. No one knew what had happened to humanity, or why they had vanished. This place might hold secrets they weren't prepared to face. They landed near an old structure, one that appeared to be a ruin from a long-forgotten time. The building was ancient, covered in dust and debris, but the architecture was unmistakably human. It was crude in comparison to the advanced civilizations of today, but there was something striking about the simplicity and efficiency of the design. Inside the building, the team began their search. The air was thick with the scent of old dust, and the walls were covered in strange, faded markings. Some of the symbols resembled the language of the galaxy's major species, but others were completely foreign. It was clear that the people who had built this place had once been advanced, yet there was an unsettling stillness about it. Nothing moved. No signs of life. No sounds. Only the quiet whispers of the past. One of the researchers, Dr. Lyra, a specialist in ancient civilizations, found something strange in the corner of the building. It was a computer terminal, old and covered in grime, but still operational. She powered it up carefully, hoping to find some information, something that could tell them what had happened to the humans. The screen flickered to life, and the team leaned in. What they saw on the screen was nothing short of astounding. A series of files, old and encrypted, were stored there. It was a record of humanity's past, their rise, their battles, and their sudden disappearance. But there was more. A single message, a last transmission, played out before them. It was brief, but the words sent a chill through their spines. "We are not gone. We are just waiting. When the time is right, we will return. The galaxy will remember us." The message ended abruptly, and the screen went black. The team stared at each other, uncertain of what to make of this discovery. The pieces were beginning to fall into place. Humanity hadn't disappeared. They had been waiting, hiding, preparing for this moment. And now, they had returned. Outside the building, the distant hum of engines could be heard. The warship was moving closer. In that moment, it became clear. Humanity wasn't just back. They had come to claim what they believed was theirs. And the galaxy, whether it was ready or not, was about to be thrust into a war it had never expected. The team quickly gathered their findings and returned to their ship. They knew their discovery would change everything. But the questions only multiplied. Who were these humans? What had they been preparing for all this time? And most importantly, why had they chosen now to reveal themselves? As they left the planet, the warship loomed large in their minds, its presence growing ever more menacing. The answers they had uncovered only raised more questions, and the galaxy was on the brink of something massive, something that would change everything. The journey back to the Galactic Command Center felt like it took an eternity. The team's ship raced through the void, the vast expanse of space stretching endlessly around them. Inside the small craft, the atmosphere was tense. Everyone was processing the information they had just uncovered on the forgotten planet. Humanity had not disappeared, as the galaxy had assumed. They had been lying in wait for the right moment to return, and now that moment had arrived. The warship, the one that had already destroyed a reconnaissance vessel, was a manifestation of humanity's power, and it was headed straight for the heart of the galaxy. Dr. Lyra, the scientist who had discovered the hidden records in the ruins, sat at the ship's console, her eyes glued to the data. She was trying to make sense of the encrypted message they had found. "We are not gone. We are just waiting. When the time is right, we will return. The galaxy will remember us." The words seemed to echo in her mind, growing louder with each passing minute. She was still processing the weight of it all. Humanity had been preparing for something. But what? General Zoran, who had been following the team's progress from his command center, now waited anxiously for their return. He had always been a man of action, a soldier first and foremost. But this situation was unlike anything he had ever encountered. A warship of unimaginable power, a mysterious species that had seemingly vanished from the galaxy. Everything pointed to a conflict that was unavoidable. But why? Why now? The team's ship finally entered the system, the familiar sight of the command center coming into view. Zoran's heart raced as he watched the data stream in from the returning ship. He immediately began to prepare for the meeting. They had to act fast, and whatever information the team had uncovered could make the difference between victory and annihilation. When the team landed and entered the briefing room, Zoran wasted no time. "What did you find?" he asked urgently. The room fell silent, and Dr. Lyra stepped forward. "We've uncovered some disturbing information," she began. "Humanity has been in hiding, waiting for the right moment to return. They never disappeared. They've been preparing, building their power, their technology. And now they've revealed themselves. The warship we've seen is just the beginning." The room was filled with murmurs of disbelief. Zoran himself was struggling to process this new revelation. How did they survive all these years? And why didn't anyone know about them? Lyra continued, "From the records we found, humanity's civilization was far more advanced than we realized. But something happened, something catastrophic, that forced them into hiding. They went underground, so to speak, preserving their power and technology. They weren't lost. They were waiting for the right moment to reclaim what they believe is theirs." Zoran ran a hand over his face, trying to take it all in. "And now they're here. How do we stop them?" "That's the problem, General," Dr. Lyra said, her voice heavy. "We don't know what they want, exactly. The message we found was vague, but it was clear that humanity is preparing for something. They've returned to take control, and they want the galaxy to remember them, not as a lost species, but as the rulers they once were." There was a heavy silence in the room. Zoran could feel the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. The galaxy's future, perhaps even the survival of its people, depended on how they responded to this new threat. It was clear that humanity was not just looking for peace. They had come for dominance, for power. They were preparing for a war, and the galaxy's leaders needed to decide how to respond. "We have no choice," Zoran finally said, his voice steady but full of determination. "We need to prepare for the worst. We can't risk underestimating them." The days that followed were filled with frenetic activity. The galaxy's most advanced fleets were put on high alert. Their commanders gathered to discuss strategy. Every planet, every system, every species, everyone had to be ready. The unknowns of humanity's warship loomed over them all, casting a shadow of fear and uncertainty. But despite the fear, a sense of unity began to form. Species that had once fought bitterly against each other began to cooperate. The impending threat of humanity's return was too great to ignore. They had to put aside their differences and stand together if they had any hope of survival. Zoran worked tirelessly, overseeing the construction of new defensive fleets, working with military strategists to predict humanity's next move. He knew that they could not rely on their old tactics. Humanity's technology was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't just superior to what they had. It was something completely foreign, something they had no frame of reference for. They had to think outside the box, to come up with strategies that could counter the unknown. The warship continued its journey across the galaxy, unhurried but unstoppable. With every passing day, it grew larger on the scanners, a constant reminder of the threat looming on the horizon. No one knew when it would strike or how, but everyone could feel the tension building. In the midst of this uncertainty, Zoran received a message that changed everything. It wasn't from the warship, but from a distant, forgotten colony. The message was short, but its contents were chilling. "We are ready. Humanity is coming, and this time, we will not be ignored." The galaxy had never faced a threat like this before. No one knew what humanity's plans were, but one thing was clear: they were not here to negotiate. They were here to take control. And as the warship drew ever closer, the galaxy's leaders realized with growing dread that their worst fears were coming true. Humanity had returned, not as allies, but as conquerors. The countdown had begun, and with each passing day, it seemed like there was less and less time to stop the inevitable. The war for the galaxy was about to begin.